Bang! Heidi smells and a surprise. It's the real estate show. Welcome to the Real Estate Show. My name is Rick Naples. Well, we're in a season where the weather's getting cooler. It's fall. Winter's right around the corner. And I thought on this show, we'll take a little break from our normal routine and I would share with you some of the experiences that I've had as a realtor over the years that I've been practicing real estate. I've picked 4 situations or 4 stories to share with you. So let's sit back and relax, enjoy the comfort of our homes as you watch the Real Estate Show and Storytime with Realtor Rick Naples. My first story I call Bang. Bang, bang, bang. And basically it's about a home inspection. When you purchase a home, many times, as I've said here on the Real Estate Show, you're going to do a home inspection. The inspector's going to go through the house, usually spend a good couple of hours in there going through all the different facets of the home. So you know what you're buying and if there's any issues that are going to need to be addressed before you close. One of the things that the inspector will do is they'll go down into the basement of the home. There are a lot of things to look at when you're down in the basement, and one of those things is the sill of the home. Now the sill is the wood that actually goes along the foundation that's attached to the foundation so the frame of the house can be attached to the sill. And they want to inspect that for any possible signs of dry rot or to see if there's any pathways or leaks that go outside where weather can get in, or especially for any insect damage. And they pay close attention to those areas that are under, say, the front stairs going to the house or where the hatchway is. And one of the unique tools that they'll use is they'll use a long metal rod or something like this. This is just a regular screwdriver with a very long shaft to it. The story circulates around, or is basically about this metal that's being used. As they're in the basement, if it's an open basement and they'll go around the perimeter and they take the rod or the large screwdriver and they hold it and they reach up and they bang all along the sill. Now the reason for banging all along the sill is they're listening and feeling for any soft spots where there might be that dry rot, or as I said, where there might be some insect damage. So they're basically going around the perimeter of the house, bang, 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 bang. For a buyer that's never been to a home inspection, it's kind of startling because you wonder, what are they doing? It's also something they need to do because a lot of times the sill with the frame of the house is up in the rafters and you can't really see it. So this is a way for them to be able to reach in. And if they do find a spot that feels soft to them, they're going to go up on a ladder with a flashlight and look a little bit more intensely to try to determine what that is. So bang, 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 bang as they're going along. In this particular situation, the buyer, myself, and the home inspector are down in the basement, and he's going around and he's doing the banging on the sill. All of a sudden, he reaches in, he thrusts in the metal rod to bang on the sill, and there's a huge spark, like almost an explosion of sparks. The best way to describe that is if you've ever seen that one of the last scenes in the movie The Natural, that baseball movie with Robert Redford, where he hits the ball and it goes up and it hits the stadium lights and they shatter and you get all those sparks raining down. That's kind of what it looked like to me. Needless to say, it startled the inspector. It threw him back for a moment, startled me, startled the buyer. What had happened was the seller of the home had decided to extend an electrical wire in order to move a light fixture in the basement. And they had wired the extension, just basically took the wires and tied them together. Didn't tape them, didn't put them in a junction box as required, didn't use wire caps, just twisted the two wires together in order to extend over to where they needed. And I guess their thought process was, hey, it's up in the rafters, it's back near the sill, no one's going to touch it, it's out of the way, there's no way of anybody getting hurt. Of course, they didn't think that there'd be an inspector someday with a metal rod banging along the sill where those wires would come in contact with the metal, cause them to spark, and thus that huge firecracker array of sparks coming out. The buyer did go ahead and buy that house. We laughed at the experience. Luckily, nobody was hurt, but it was something that was in the inspection report. Obviously, we negotiated to have the seller properly have those wires connected in a safe junction box, even though it was up and out of the way. Never know what you're going to find in a home inspection. My second story I call Heidi. Heidi is a dog. She's a large dog, an older dog. One of those types of dogs that, due to age, she kind of walks with a little bit of a waddle, a little hard to see, maybe a little hard to hear, but her name was Heidi. The owner of the house didn't like to crate Heidi or remove her from the household when a showing was going to go on, and had asked if she could, stay. And she's a very friendly dog, so my thought was, all right, I'm fine with that. Now, in the front of the house, there was a landscaped island. One of those islands, wood chips, some flowering bushes, some shade trees. And Heidi would go out and lay in the island, in the wood chips, and relax under the shade and maybe feel the cool breezes of the day as they go on across the front yard. That was kind of her spot. The house was in the Connecticut hills, and just beautiful views for where the house was positioned. And the lot that it was on was quite a large lot. So you would come in to the driveway where the garage was, and then you'd have to walk a distance over in order to get into the house. It was on one of those typical Connecticut country roads or New England country roads. You know what I'm talking about. The long, winding roads that go through the hills, kind of a little thinner than our modern road because it's been there for a number of years. No lights. It's one of those roads that we've all experienced, at nighttime you're driving down the road and really all you have is your headlights to see where you're going, and you kind of are cautious, especially if it's not a road that you've been down before. So a buyer comes along, sees the house, doesn't necessarily like the house, but likes the location of the home, and makes an offer, and the offer is subsequently accepted. The house had some challenges. It had an underground oil tank, and that oil tank had to be removed. It had an unfinished bathroom that had to be finished. But the seller was not in a position to have the monies to do those things. So the buyer, because they wanted the home, before the closing, before they actually owed it, against the advice of their realtor, invested in having a company come in and dig out the oil tank and replace it with a brand new above ground oil tank, and also finish the bathroom that the seller had started but never finished downstairs. So they invested some money in a home they don't own. Very unusual situation, but they wanted this house. Heidi, Every time someone would come to look at the house, or during all this process when there were workers coming doing what they would do, she would always just come out, sit on the island, watch things going on, and kind of stay out of everybody's way. I remember many times when I would do an open house, she would come into the house and she'd come up the stairs and she'd sit right next to me in the kitchen. And as people would come in to look at the house, she'd perk her head up, wag her tail a little bit, maybe go over to people to greet them. But a very, very friendly dog, the kind of dog that anybody would be proud to own. I got to know her. It was kind of funny because I would go to show the house and she'd come right over to me to greet me because she got to know me. It's the day before the closing. The seller has his truck. He's moving his final belongings out of the home into the truck because the closing is going to be the next morning. It's evening, just about when the sun is starting to set. It's kind of twilight outside. Heidi is roaming around the yard as she's done all the time, kind of sitting on her island watching her owner move stuff in and out of the house. And for some reason, something that the owner told me she's never done before, she got up and she waddled out to the roadway. She went into the road. Unfortunately, at the same time, a driver was coming down the road. The driver didn't see the dog. Heidi didn't see the car. She was struck and killed. The owner, in his grief, didn't know what to do. So he gathered up Heidi's body, brought her back into the yard, and in his grief decided that he was going to bury her. And he buried her in the landscaped island under the shade trees between the flowering bushes where she had always spent her time laying during the course of the day. He then calls me, his realtor, and tells me what happened, and subsequently tells me what he did. Now we're going to close on the house the next morning. The dilemma here is this possibly could be a deal breaker. I mean, there's a dead animal buried in the front yard. I have become aware of it. I need to tell this to the buyer's agent so they can tell the buyer. Who knows how the buyer is going to react? How would you react? I call the buyer's agent. I explain what happened. I ended up leaving a voicemail because he didn't pick up the phone. It was quite late at night. It was like 10, 11 o'clock at night. I forget how late it was. So I went to the closing the next morning, worried and concerned. I figured I would console with my seller there at the closing. When I arrived to the closing, my seller wasn't there. It turned out that he had showed up earlier, signed his half of the paperwork, jumped in his truck and took off. He just wanted out of there. Done with the house. He just wanted out of there. So I'm in the attorney's lobby. In walks the buyer. They come in with their attorney. I asked the realtor if he got my message. He says yes. The buyer's attorney and the buyer go into the conference room, shut the door. I'm nervous because, first of all, I don't have the seller there to make any last-minute decisions if all of a sudden some kind of negotiation is going to open up. The door opens. They invite me in. I go in. The seller's attorney's in there. The buyer's attorney's in there. The buyer's in there. And I'm informed that the buyer, having had dogs himself, understood and was perfectly comfortable with allowing Heidi to rest where she had always laid and rest in peace in the island under the shade trees with the flowering bushes. This is the Real Estate Show, and I'm Rick Naples, and I'm sharing stories of some of the experiences that I've had as a realtor over a number of the years. This next story I want to share with you, I call it the septic tank. Now, this is interesting. This goes back a number of years when I first started out as a realtor. I was fortunate to grow up and live in houses that always were connected to the public sewer system. And a septic tank, I wasn't familiar with what a septic tank was. And being a realtor, I was curious because it's a learning experience. So I had sold a home and it had a septic system and there was going to be a septic inspection. I wanted to be there not only to support my buyer, but to also see what the whole inspection was all about, to experience the inspection so I can share it in the future with other buyers should we run across the situation again. Now, it's winter time. It's one of those cool winter days. There's about a foot of snow on the ground. This is an older house. The septic system is somewhere in the front yard. We quite don't know, but there's a foot of snow on the ground. And it's one of those crisp, cold winter days, where the sun is shining, so it looks like it's nice and warm, but it's cold. And as you're standing, you can feel the coldness of the frozen ground permeating through the bottoms of your shoes. So we go to the home. And in pulls this big tank truck. This is the septic inspector. Because the tank truck's there because they have to pump the tank in order to inspect it. And a gentleman gets out, he goes around to the back of the truck, he gets a shovel and a big long pole. And he trudges across the snow into the front yard. We're kind of standing off to the side to the driveway. And he immediately clears the snow away with the shovel, takes the big long pole and kind of cracks the frozen ground, moves all that dirt aside, and finds the cap to the septic tank. I'm amazed because I didn't know where the septic tank was. I was just amazed that he could find it so quickly. But apparently they look at land records and they kind of know where it is. So he takes the cap, the big opening to the top of the tank, and he opens it up. Now, I'm a new realtor, so I'm curious. I go on over, so I'm standing above this hole in the ground looking in. And all I see is a hole, this porthole, with water in it. There's no smell. I thought, being a septic tank, that as soon as he opened it up, there was going to be, quite a smell. But there was nothing. Just the hole in the ground, cap removed, and water. He goes over to the tanker truck, he gets the hose, he drags it across the front lawn, he puts this big hose into the tank, goes back, puts the pump on, and the water starts to be sucked out of the tank. And I'm standing there and I'm watching the water level drop as the pump is taking the water out. And I was amazed because it kept going down and down and down. This was pretty deep. It almost looked like you'd probably be able to stand up inside the tank without your head touching the top. I mean, it was a deep hole. You could hear the sound of the pump change a little bit. He goes over, he shuts the pump off, and then he comes back over. And he does a technique that they call churning the tank. You see, what happens is, as the waste comes out of the house and it goes into the septic tank, the waste settles to the bottom of the tank and the water rises above it. So you have this sludge all the waste materials, the sludge, it's on the bottom of the tank. And they have to get that all out of there so that they can inspect the full tank. So they do, as I said, what's called churning the tank. This is where he takes that big metal rod, the same one he used to break the frozen ground, sticks it down into the tank, into the sludge, and does a churning. Actually, he stirs the tank. He's churning up all of that waste and stirring the tank. I'm standing over the opening. To that point, it's nice, crisp, clean winter air. There's no water barrier between the sludge and the now open air because the tank is open. What comes up out of that tank, I'll let you use your imagination. Needless to say, the septic tank lived up to its reputation of what it actually was. My fourth story I call Surprise, and it's an interesting story. You know, as a realtor, you go to a lot of different houses, and sometimes you'll show a house that's a vacant home. This is a situation where the seller had moved out of the house and had left behind some large items that are difficult to move. And that's not uncommon. Sometimes that happens. It's said in the literature, the buyer's agent or the seller's agent had put in there that sellers left behind large items for buyer's consideration. Should buyer want, they're welcome to them. If not, seller is willing to make arrangements to have them removed. But it didn't say what those items were. Now, there's a technique that realtors use when they're showing a house, and that's where you let your buyer go through first and you follow them. This is so they get first impressions as they're going through the house. There's also safety reasons for doing that, and I've talked about that on past real estate shows. So we get to the point where now we're going to go down in the basement. I find the basement entrance and I open the door, and the staircase, goes down. Typical basement, you have the staircase that goes down into the basement. But this house was one of those houses where the stairs go down to a short landing and then it makes a sharp turn, either right or left depending on the orientation of the basement. So when you're standing at the top of the stairs, all you see is the stairs go down, the landing, and the wall for the foundation. You can't really see into the basement. I turn the light on, and my buyer goes down the stairs. I'm at the top of the stairs, and I'm allowing her to go down the stairs first because I don't want to be right behind her. Let's let her get down the stairs and then I'll follow. She goes down the stairs. She takes that turn off the platform, the step in the basement, and all of a sudden I hear a scream. My first reaction is panic. What happened? She hurt? What's going on? So I rush down the stairs and I turn the corner. And then I see the reason of why she screams. Standing there, big as life, staring right at me, is a full-size stuffed bear. Rather than reading an email, I just wanted to spend a few moments to express my thank you to all the fellow realtors that are members of the Mid-State Association of Realtors, and to the past Realtors of the Year who voted me the 2016 Mid-State Association of Realtors Realtor of the Year for all of the works that I've done to support the association, support my community, and the professionalism that I've demonstrated in conducting my real estate business. So just a personal thank you to all of those folks and to all those fellow members. My name is Rick Naples. This is The Real Estate Show. I'll see you next time.